right, Lindsay, what's in your lens?
Let's discuss. So President Trump has repeatedly described this immigration crackdown as a mission to remove the, quote, worst of the worst, meaning murderers, rapists, gang members. But according to an internal Department of Homeland Security document obtained by CBS News, the data tells a far more complicated story. So ICE made roughly 393,000 arrests between January 21st, 2025, and the end of January this year, 2026. That's more than triple the number of administrative arrests in fiscal year 2024. So yes, enforcement has ramped up dramatically. But here's the part that stood out to me. Less than 14% of those arrested had charges or convictions for violent crimes like homicide, robbery, sexual assault, kidnapping, or arson. Take a listen to a bit of the reporting.
The president, for example, often talks about ICE going after murderers, gangsters, and sexual offenders and rapists, but only 2% of the people arrested by ICE had been convicted or charged with homicide or sexual assault, and another 2% were identified as gang members. The numbers really illustrate, guys, that the Trump administration's mass deportation policy is also impacting a lot of people who, yes, may be in the country without legal permission, but are not any threat to the public or to national security.
Now, nearly 40% of those arrested had no criminal record at all. They were accused only of civil immigration violations, things like overstaying a visa or living in the country without authorization. Those are civil offenses, typically handled in immigration court, not criminal court. When the administration frames this operation primarily as a sweep of violent predators, the public deserves clarity about who is actually being arrested. Public opinion appears to be shifting also. A CBS News poll found support for President Trump's deportation efforts has dropped from 59% at the start of his second term to 46%. More than 60% of Americans surveyed said immigration agents are being, quote, too tough. That shift may reflect what people are seeing: workplace raids, day laborers targeted in parking lots, even U.S. citizens stopped and questioned. This isn't a debate about whether immigration law should be enforced. It's a debate about transparency and proportionality. If nearly 40% of those arrested have no criminal record and only a small fraction are accused of the violent crimes that dominate political speeches, then we have to ask ourselves whether the policy matches the promise. And if we're going to have a national conversation about immigration enforcement, it needs to start with who is actually being swept up, not just who we're told is.
If 40% don't have a criminal record, doesn't that mean 60% do have a criminal?
Well, the other ones in the report, and I urge you to watch it, would show that, yeah, like some people, they had a traffic violation. Like I'm sure you have, Robbie, if you drive your little scooter on the sidewalk, that's illegal. I don't know if you do, and it's not little, it's a big scooter, whatever. But my point is, these are small traffic violations, and then we're hearing people argue, they violated the law. That's not the criminals that Trump campaigned on arresting, right? So if somebody who works in a factory that is fueling our economy and otherwise living and abiding by all of our laws has a traffic violation, like I'm sure everyone watching has had at least one in their lifetime, they should go to criminal jail and not immigration civil court for the actual offense, which is coming to the country or overstaying a visa, which is not legal in our country. That's what they should be in criminal court for.
If you're here in the country illegally, I'm sorry, you have to really, really try to follow the letter of the law involving all other laws to protect yourself, because if you get
stopped for a tail light
and they find out you're here illegally, then they're going to take some immigration action against you.
Fine,
what do you want me to say? You're here illegally.
That's fine, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about they stop you and then they find out you're here illegally.
Do I think they should?
I'm talking about
specifically
they're
go out of
randomly
their
raiding
way
places,
scoop
finding
up
people, finding out their names.
Only problem is they have traffic violations. No, of course not.
That's what's happening, though. That's what's happening. If 60%, I said 14% of people have actually been convicted of or are currently in the process of being accused of criminal convictions that the president talks about.
By the way, some of these traffic violations are a little bit more serious than just
we discussed them
over.
Yes, we discussed them.
I mean, this has made big news in conservative media. The couple truck drivers who are illegal immigrants who got licenses to operate trucks and are driving like it's the third world and have caused car crashes that have killed Americans.
And because
it's
you have,
pretty outrageous
I think,
for a lot of people.
I think it's important to note that because you have one example of something doesn't mean that it's
not
the
just one.
overwhelming. Two examples doesn't mean that it's the overwhelming thing that's happening. You pointed that out in the Savannah Guthrie story we just talked about. We have one example of a potential kidnapping, but that's not how these kidnapping cases usually work, right? But because the spotlight's on it, we believe that we should be extra fearful about the way that immigrants drive. That's wholly not true.
Right.
So I don't think that we should try to act like there's a bunch of.
But the conservative, right, I'm not exaggerating, but the conservative perspective is there shouldn't even be one or two of these instances because they're all illegal immigrants and they want them all gone. So it's not about proportionality or statistics or how likely it is. It's any infractions by illegal immigrants shouldn't be taking place at all. We shouldn't have to deal with. We should deal with zero.
But we hear
they
the
want them all
president
gone.
and the administration,
This is a
specifically the
conservative
president.
perspective, not my perspective.
Fine. And I know your perspective, but we hear the president often saying that there are rapists, gang members, and all these people that he's arresting. That's only 14%. So I want you to address the fact that most people that he's arresting and taking out of this country
14%
are not.
fewer, okay, there a lot of Americans will say 14% fewer rapists and gang members.
400,000 people, and then 300. So whatever 14% of 393,000 that have been taken out
We
of.
have to deport some other illegal immigrants who haven't. So we end up collecting them in our process of getting the 14% who are rapists and gang members. We also ensnare a significant number of illegals who have not committed other crimes.
We also killed 2 Americans in the
that
process.
was worth it. That's
what
many
And we also killed
Americans
2
would
Americans
say.
in the process with our tactics in Minnesota. So that's also, that all
Because
part of the
Democrats
worth it?
resist local law enforcement cooperating with the federal authorities.
No, it's not about he
Trying
said,
to
she
stop
said. It actually
any
was an
illegal
incident
immigrants
where
from
we're
being
talking
deported
about
whatsoever.
the extreme use of force by law enforcement. We're currently investigating that right now, whether that was the case or they were out of bounds with their actions. So
Use of
therefore,
force
that's the
follows from
dialogue.
Them saying they'll do no immigration enforcement whatsoever in Minnesota.
So Democratic leaders, like Fry did not tell Renee Good exactly how to behave. Republican leaders did not tell ICE exactly how to behave. Right is right and wrong is wrong. Using too much force on an American citizen should be looked at independently and fairly by both sides and saying, we don't want Americans to die.
Driving into a police officer is going to result in them taking lethal force.
Do you have another excuse for Alex Preddy, or are you going to say he was driving as well?
No, I have not taken the position that was a rightful shooting. I don't know.
You haven't taken the position that either one were rightful.
wrongful to
But I
me,
think we should look
but
into that and say this is not the outcome of immigration.
I agree. But it is not, in fact, the outcome in cities and states where the local authorities are working with national authorities to detain and deport illegal immigrants.
I think that we can do
So-
better around the rhetoric that's happening with migrants in this country. I think that you could point fingers about whether calling people rapists is effective when the numbers don't show that. I think we could do better with communication before enforcement. So the fact that the president is now speaking to Walz and putting in Tom Homan to be the level-headed manager of the situation after the fact, after 2 Americans is killed, is too little too late. I think this all could have been handled
Tim Walz
ahead of
agrees
time.
now that
and
they
not,
can cooperate.
he started
Great.
with pointing fingers.
I've had enough of this too. We've all had enough of innocent people getting killed. So I hope Democrats got the message and are going to help out. So now we'll have less of these violent
I
confrontations.
can't believe that you seriously would put all the blame on that people died on Democrats saying they don't want the way
no one's
immigration is
dying
handled
in
by
states
the
where
president.
they're working together, and because when they work together, you can arrest or detain an illegal immigrant at the courthouse where there's no danger, where they've already gone through a metal detector, so they don't have weapons. So then that's safer for everyone. There's no way for them to flee. That's what we want to happen. You want the stops to occur in safe environments like a courthouse, for instance. That's what can happen in red states all over the country. It's not what happens in Minnesota because they're not going to do it.
Yeah, there are a lot of laws in this country that have been changed and discussed over time between local leaders and federal officials. And the president should have started with a conversation with leaders that didn't agree with his sweeping plan for the nation.
Next up, former Trump advisor Steve Bannon. He's under fire from prominent figures like Elon Musk because of his alleged connection to Jeffrey Epstein. Stay with us.